Three more local coronavirus infections as authorities reportedly considering a slight relaxation of social distancing measures. The Finance Committee approves additional funding for anti-epidemic relief. And details of the government's third quarter land sale plan.
Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The city's COVID-19 tally went up by 10 today, 3 local cases linked to previous infections and 7 imported cases.
This, as sources say the government is considering whether to slightly relax existing social distancing measures. Caleb Leung begins our coverage.
One of the newly reported local cases is linked to a construction site on Muk Thai Street in Kai Tak. A 43-year-old worker there was confirmed to be infected one day after a case was reported at the construction site. The man lives in Kam Lung Court in Ma On Shan. This morning, work was suspended at part of the Kai Tak site. Center for Health Protection officials went there to handle some 500 specimen bottles to workers. Wooden dividers were set up at the workers' lunch area for social distancing purposes. But the hygiene conditions appeared unsatisfactory. Trash including worn face masks and discarded lunch boxes could be spotted around the area. The other 2 newly diagnosed patients include a 1-year-old boy living in Hong Heng Court in Ho Man Tin and a 42-year-old woman who is a resident of Po Tin Estate in Tuen Mun. The authorities believe the 3 patients all started to develop symptoms on September 26. As for the 7 imported cases, the patients arrived from India, Myanmar, the UK, France, Argentina, the Philippines and Ukraine respectively. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Well, with the infection numbers on the decline, the government is considering relaxing social distancing measures.
If the rules are softened, it could allow for larger gatherings at religious activities. Pinky Wong has details.
The government's ban on group gatherings of no more than 4 people will be in effect until Thursday. One medical expert believes those restrictions should be maintained.
Well, I think at the moment we are near the end of the 3rd wave. The number of cases has decreased a lot in recent days. The local case of unknown source yesterday has clearly reflected there is still silent community transmission. So I think we have to be careful not to relax the social distancing measures too much.
Officials are considering relaxing the gathering ban for religious activities. He thinks that could work under certain circumstances.
We can do that for the church activities in a similar way to what we do for the cinemas. So if you can restrict the number of people inside the church, there is no food or drink served. Everybody will be wearing masks during the church activities. I think that is feasible. So you can limit the number to between 20 to begin with, and eventually increase to 50, like what we did before in the 2nd wave.
With Mid-Autumn Festival around the corner, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department appealed for people to abide by social distancing rules. They also want the public to refrain from burning wax or releasing sky lanterns during the celebration. The public is also being reminded not to enter closed leisure facilities such as public beaches and barbecue sites. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Lawmakers today approved some $16 billion in extra government funding for anti-epidemic relief.
However, the government says it's highly unlikely the so-called health code system for cross-border travellers will be rolled out before National Day. Haley Joe has more.
37 for, 23 against, no abstentions. I declare that the proposal is carried. Thank you all.
The government's $16 billion funding request is part of the $24 billion coronavirus aid package. It'll be used to subsidize the hardest hit sectors, procure COVID-19 vaccines, and cover Social Security costs. The proposal had faced strong opposition from lawmakers across parties.
The government is sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars, and they are not helping the unemployed and school children. The wholesale trade and the retail trade has not been covered this time. In terms of rents, we have been asking for support from the chief executive all along. Many companies are on the verge. Out of public finance considerations, this time we are focusing on scheduled premises who were ordered to close or limit their operating hours.
The track record of the government's fiscal prudence has come under question, especially over its wage subsidy scheme.
Those are cleaning companies and maintenance companies for lifts. They are not affected under the COVID. Why are you giving public money to these companies? In the second tranche, we have been focusing on companies of larger scale. So we need to draw a line.
Meanwhile, pro-Beijing lawmakers urged the government to expedite the launch of the so-called health code system.
I don't think it is very likely that we can open the border by the 1st of October. What about November? We are striving to do that.
Chung said once the system is launched, those traveling for family visits and business trips will be allowed to apply first before leisure travelers. Hailey Zhou, TVB News.
The government announced its third quarter sales for 4 plots of land to meet the housing, economic and social development needs of the community.
Also taking into consideration development projects offered by the MTR Corporation and private developers, the land plots combined are expected to provide nearly 2,800 new residential units. Kana Chu reports.
Slated for October to December, the government is offering 2 residential sites at the Peak and in Kai Tak in its upcoming land sale. That's expected to provide about 630 units in total.
For the residential site on Mansfield Road at the Peak, the government will divide it into 2 parcels for disposal. The first one, to be tendered in the third quarter, is capable of providing about 240 units. The site in Kai Tak is located on the old runway and is capable of providing about 390 units.
On top of that, the application for Phase 5 of the MTR Wangchuk Hang Station will also be open, supporting the provision of about 1,000 units. An additional 1,150 units are expected to be produced under 4 private development and redevelopment projects. Including that, the coming quarter is projected to supply a total of 2,780 residential units. Combined with the supply from the 2 previous quarters, the total private housing land supply this financial year will support the provision of about 7,400 new units. That accounts for about 57% of the government's target of 12,900 units set for the year. Anticipating the private development or redevelopment projects to take up about a third of the supply, the government is confident its housing supply target can be met. Using a 2-envelope approach, it will also offer by tender a family industrial site and a plot of commercial land located at Site 3 of the new Central Harbourfront. Despite the persistence of the coronavirus pandemic, Simon Cheng, a senior manager of Centerline Surveyors, believes the new round of land sales is likely to draw bids from quite a number of developers. But that momentum may be affected should there be a 4th wave of coronavirus infections. Kana Chu, TVB News.
Yeah. Turning overseas, a U.S. federal judge has temporarily blocked a Trump administration order that would have banned the popular video sharing app TikTok from U.S. smartphone stores at midnight. A more comprehensive ban set for November 12th remains in place. The ruling follows an emergency Sunday hearing in which lawyers for TikTok argued that the ban would infringe First Amendment rights and do irreparable harm to the business. U.S. President Donald Trump declared Chinese-owned TikTok a threat to national security and ordered that the company be sold to American interests. TikTok owner ByteDance is scrambling to finalize a deal struck tentatively last week in which it would partner with Oracle and Walmart.
The New York Times is reporting that U.S. President Donald Trump paid just $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017.
Yeah, this story also reveals he paid no income taxes at all for many years, although Trump has dismissed the report as fake news and evidence of a Democratic conspiracy against him. Perhaps it should have come as no surprise, given how evasive Donald Trump has been about his tax returns before and after he took up the US presidency. Still, the revelations in the New York Times that Trump paid just $750 in federal income taxes the year he ran for office and in 2017, while paying no income taxes at all in many other years, threatens to undercut a pillar of his appeal among blue-collar voters. It could also give extra ammunition for his Democratic rival Joe Biden to use in this brutal campaign. At the White House, Trump was on the defensive when asked about the tax revelations, calling it a smear by the Democrats and fake news from the Times.
Totally fake news. No, actually I paid tax, and you'll see that as soon as my tax returns. It's under audit. They've been under audit for a long time. The IRS does not treat me well. They treat me like the Tea Party, like they treated the Tea Party. They don't treat me well.
Earlier on the weekend, Trump repeated his unsubstantiated claims that the Democrats are trying to steal the November election, priming his supporters to be on their guard for voter fraud.
Everybody in this Democrat area got 2 ballots instead of 1. And then 2 days ago, they found 8 ballots in a waste paper basket. Unfortunately, they all had the name Trump written on them. We were going to vote for Trump. They were military ballots, the military. And then they have a stream in a very good state, and they found lots of ballots dumped in the stream.
Over in Delaware, Joe Biden repeated his opposition to Trump's appointment of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, arguing she could cast a decisive vote to take down the Obamacare health law.
People are voting right now because they know the very soul of this country is at stake, and because they know that the decisions of the Supreme Court affect their everyday lives.
The British government says it will ensure it has stockpiles of personal protective equipment to help tackle the pandemic as coronavirus cases rebound. Earlier this year, frontline staff said they lacked masks, gowns and other items and were putting their lives at risk. Meanwhile, the UK government wants university students to be able to return home for Christmas. Recent outbreaks have forced some college students to self-isolate in their rooms and follow lectures online. Bars and restaurants in the French port city of Marseille closed as part of measures to limit the spread of COVID-19. This closure is expected to last until October 11th. Residents in a locked-down neighbourhood of Madrid protested outside the regional parliament. They're demanding local health services be reinforced. The demonstration came as a memorial opened to pay tribute to virus victims. Some 31,000 Spaniards have died during the outbreak.
Voters in Switzerland have defeated a nationalist party's proposal to limit the number of European Union citizens allowed to live and work in their country. The Swiss broadcaster SRF reported that the measure was rejected by 61.7% of voters, with 38.3% in favor. All but 4 of the country's 26 cantons opposed the plan, proposed by the Swiss People's Party to give preferential access to jobs, social protection and benefits to people from Switzerland over those from the EU. The remains of 117 Chinese soldiers who died during the Korean War returned home Sunday. A Chinese military transport plane received a water salute as it touched down in Liaoning province. The troops' remains will now be buried at a martyrs' park in Shenyang. That's also where the remains of hundreds of other Chinese soldiers that have been returned from South Korea since 2014 were laid to rest. Earlier, a repatriation ceremony was held near South Korea's capital, Seoul. Sunday's event was the 7th annual repatriation. This year's return, originally planned for the spring, was postponed because of the pandemic.
Back locally, Raymond Chan and Eddie Chu have officially informed the Legislative Council Secretariat of their decision not to stay for the extended LegCo term.
We do not agree the decision of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress that this this six-term legislator can be extended by a mere decision of the committee for one more year. This is an appointed legislature rather than a legislature elected by the people.
Both lawmakers earlier stated their intention not to serve in the extended term from October onwards. Their announcement comes one day ahead of results of a poll commissioned by the Democratic Party. The poll will decide whether 15 pan-democratic legislators will leave or remain in the legislature for the extended term.
An 18-year-old man was sentenced to 46 months in prison for throwing petrol bombs at a police station. Kelvin Chan earlier pled guilty to 1 count of attempted arson and 1 count of possession of items with intent to destroy or damage property. On January 29th, he hurled 2 petrol bombs at Kwai Chung Police Station. Officers later seized 11 petrol bombs in his subdivided unit. Although the defense counsel told the court that Chan was only 17 years old at the time of the offense and was remorseful afterwards, District Court Judge Amanda Woodcock said a deterrent sentence was necessary. She described the attack as a planned act, as Chan had taken time to learn online how to make petrol bombs. Taking into consideration Chan's guilty plea, the judge handed down a prison term of 3 years and 10 months.
The RTHK Programme Staff Union is demanding authorities clearly explain why the probation period for one of its reporters has been extended. Outside Broadcasting House this morning, members of the union staged a protest against what they called unjustified suppression. According to media reports, RTHK extended the probation period of Nabella Kosa for another 120 days. The journalist has allegedly received complaints over her tough questioning of authorities during last year's social unrest. The Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development says the controversy is entirely an internal matter for the broadcaster.
Cyclists will be able to enjoy a new track linking Yuen Long with Sheng Shui starting tomorrow. The 11-kilometer-long bike lane marks the completion of the entire 60-kilometer-long track between Tunmun and Ma On Shan. The newly opened path runs across various scenic spots, including the Cam Tin River in Yuen Long and the Long Valley Wetland in Sheng Shui. That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Bye for now. Good night.